Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the 18th episode of the podcast. We are continuing the previous discussion on reading as per great readers. I shared around 18 quotes in the previous episode of some great names in the history of men and women. Before we delve into the new quotes today on reading, how great readers think about reading, and learn from them, I would like to give a mention of some comments we got on the previous episode. Henceforth, I shall be choosing a best comment and quoting it here, mentioning the name of the one who comments. So please take out some good time in order to write good feedback. It can be negative also. I am open to the criticism. So the first comment, I have chosen two comments from the previous episode, is from Sayana Varsi. She writes, "What an educating episode. This really is phenomenal. The ardent desire of mine to read books has bloomed again. Jazakallahu khairan. And yes sir, kindly share second episode of this one. They are so exciting." Thank you so much, Sayana, for writing this lovely feedback. Another feedback I'm going to read of is Artistry Splendor. So she writes, "Reading was a hobby for me that gave me pleasure. But now after listening to this podcast, it's so much more. Jazakallah khair, sir." Thank you so much, Artistry Splendor, for this lovely feedback. This makes me know that the audience, you people, like it, and it makes me more motivated. It stimulates me more to make more. So let's begin our today's episode on quotes of writers, great people on reading. So the first quote today is from Cicero. He was a Roman statesman, a philosopher, ancient philosopher. He was born in 106 BC. So you come to know how old philosopher he is. One of the greatest philosophers ever known in the human history. He writes, "A room without books is like a body without soul. A room without books is like a body without soul." So this quote talks about the importance of having books in our house, in our home. So books are like soul of your home, soul of your room. So don't deprive your beautiful room of books. You must have books. You must accumulate books as many you can and read them also. I'm reminded of the quote which we shared in the previous episode of Jane Austen. She would say, "When I have a house of my own, I shall be miserable if I have not an excellent library." So it's being miserable, having a good room, good house, and not having books there. So it is suggested to you all to keep buying books, having books. So you might be confused which books to buy first. I have already made a video. You can look in the list of my videos and find this one, Books for Beginners. I have given around 10 books there. So please watch that video and see which books you should buy and start a library henceforth. This reminds me of my habit of accumulating books. It's been very long time since I started buying books. I remember when I was a child, I would keep my pocket money for the books. So I'm reminded of another quote since it is the quotes episode. So I'm sharing one more quote. Otherwise, I would really love to share my experience with the books, how difficult times there have been, or different and unique experiences I have had with the books. Someday I may share them with you. So here is a quote. He says, it's actually a novel by Victor Hugo, Les Misérables, a masterpiece, a classic novel. I recommend this book to the readers. He says, he actually quotes a character. He says, he never went out without a book under his arm, and he often came back with two. So I can really relate to it. I am really crazy about buying books. Whenever I hear about new books, some book which is wonderful, which gets good reviews, I go to Amazon or I go to the bookshop nearby and I buy the books right away. So the next quote is by Ralph Waldo Emerson, one of the known writers. He says, if we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads. If we encounter a man of rare intellect, we should ask him what books he reads. So that means our intellect is developed by reading books. If you want to be an intellectual person, you must read good books. And if you see someone who is an intelligent person, know that he is intelligent, greatly intelligent, because of the books he has read. So ask him which books he has read, so that you too would read and become intellectual. Next quote, read the best books, or you may not have a chance to read them at all. Henry David Thoreau, one of my favorite writers, American philosopher, poet, a staunch lover of nature. Henry David Thoreau, his masterpiece, Walden, is highly recommended. I repeat the quote, read the best books first, or you may not have a chance to read them at all. So you should know which books to read. It should not happen that you lay your hands on any book and start reading. No, don't be crazy. Don't be swayed by the good titles. This does not matter. Don't judge the book by its cover. Okay, you would start reading like a Chetan Bhagat. I read him initially. It's okay if you read Chetan Bhagat initially for the sake of getting habit of reading, but he is not recommended. Okay, so and there are many writers, many books which should not be read at all. So read the best books first, because there are plethora of books available in the market, and we don't have enough life to read them all. So the best thing is to read the ones which are known best. Like we have Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, one of the best novels, rather the best novel ever written. We have Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes, a classical novel. We have Jane Austen's novels like Persuasion. We have Sense and Sensibility. We have Pride and Prejudice, wonderful novels. We have Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. We have Brothers Karamazov. We have Notes from Underground, his masterpiece. We have like Victor Hugo, Les Misérables, a wonderful novel. We have Orhan Pamuk, My Name is Red, and many other novels of his. He's a wonderful writer. We have some great writers which we should read before we read some other stuff that is just for the sake of entertainment. Anyways, so the next quote is by C.S. Levy. He says, I can't imagine a man really enjoying a book and reading it only once. One more suggestion, great suggestion for the readers, that they should read a good book many times. I can't imagine a man really enjoying a book and reading it only once. So you should read book which you like the most. We should reread it, because only by rereading you can read it deeply, you can read it better. Another quote, similar quote, is of my favorite writer, short story writer, Oscar Wilde. He has written even novels also, but he is well known for his short stories, The Happy Prince and Nightingale and the Rose, many short stories he has written. He says, if one cannot enjoy reading a book over and over again, there is no use of reading it at all. If one cannot enjoy reading a book over and over again, there is no use in reading it at all. Oscar Wilde. Now, one of my favorite personalities, Frederick Douglass. He was an American slave. He taught himself to read and write and became whatever he became. I recommend his autobiography of Frederick Douglass. You can imagine, really, rather you cannot imagine that someone who is a slave, who is not allowed to study, allowed to get educated, and he does it himself, self-made person, and he then writes his autobiography. So a remarkable man. He says, once you learn to read, you will be free forever. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free. I think you are reminded, and I too am reminded of Malcolm X's quote. He would say the similar thing. Reading helps you to free your mind. It's captivated by a lot of things around. You are drawn to things which are futile, which are vulgar, which are meaningless. And it's reading which frees your mind from that. And if you aren't able to read, you have to listen to people. You have to accept what they say. But if you are yourself able to read, you can read it yourself. Nobody can fool you. An illiterate mind can be easily fooled. But an educated man, real educated mind can never be fooled. So once you learn to read, you will be forever free. Again, one more quote by Voltaire. He says, despite the enormous quantity of books, how few people read. He says, despite enormous quantity of books, how few people read. There are a lot of books available, but only few people read. Because only few people are free, as Frederick Douglass said. And he says, and if one reads profitably, one would realize how much stupid stuff the vulgar herd is content to swallow every day. And if you are a reader, you will be able to see around your society how trivial stuff they are into. Mobile phones, small reels, shorts, and that nonsense stuff is going on, and they waste time in those things. Although there are a lot of books which they could have read and freed their minds and themselves. I would like to repeat this quote again. Despite enormous quantity of books, how few people read, and if one reads profitably, one would realize how much stupid stuff the vulgar herd is content to swallow every day. Now I would like to quote Socrates here. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. See, the writers we read, they have had plenty of knowledge and experience. It would take us a lot of time if we start gaining that experience on our own, experimenting every damn thing. It's laborious. It's a hectic task. But the best way to do is to learn from their experiences through their writings, what they have written. In other words, reading. Reading can help you to improve yourself by others' experiences, but by what others have already learned. Okay, so another quote is by Mortimer J. Adler. He is the man who has written this masterpiece on how to read a book, highly recommended to all the readers. How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. And when Van Doren. He says, reading is a basic tool in the living of a good life. Reading is a basic tool in the living of a good life. Really, reading helps you to see the light in the darkness. Reading helps you to see hope in hopelessness. Reading helps you to find the solutions of your problems. Reading helps you to be patient. Reading helps you to realize the importance of things around you. It's reading. Reading is a basic tool in the living of a good life. As I had already quoted in the previous episode, the first commandment to our beloved prophet was, read in the name of thy Lord. Because this is the beginning of a new life, a new world. He is known as the greatest person of the world. It's not I who is saying it. There is a book named The 100 Influential Personalities of the World. Michael Hart. He chose the 100 most influential personalities. And then he graded them. Who was the first? Who next? What next? What next? And he put Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam at number 1. And he was ordered to read. The first commandment to him was to read. Although when he was asked to read, he said, I am not a reader. I am not literate. So he was the greatest. He could have been given this rebate, this discount not to read, but he too wasn't given. Because there is no alternative of reading. That's what we come to know from this. There's no alternative of reading. Reading is a basic tool in the living of a good life. I should add, reading is a basic tool in the living of a successful life, virtuous life, peaceful life. Reading. Going ahead, let me quote Gustave Flaubert. He is a French writer. His book, Madame Bovary, is highly recommended. He says, what better occupation, really, than to spend the evening at the fireside with a book, with the wind beating on the windows and the lamp burning bright. He is actually drawing a scene, a beautiful scene. He is sitting, or you are sitting, imagine yourself sitting at the fireside with a book, and there is wind going on and it is beating the window and the lamp is burning bright. You're reading. How beautiful experience it is. You cannot, if you aren't a reader, you will not understand this feeling. But if you are a reader, you will understand it quite well. And if you haven't read so far, start reading. Get books. Spend 10 minutes every day on reading. Initially read 2 pages every day. 2 pages every day. It will be 60 pages a month. 2 months, 120 pages. Maybe a book in 2 months you'll be able to read. And if it is a small book of maybe 50 pages, there are books of 50 pages, 60 pages, novellas, or some non-fiction, small non-fiction essays. You will feel great about yourself when you finish a book. You keep it on the shelf and you get another one, you keep it on the shelf and you will feel, wow, this is what I have done, I've read it. So it's a great feeling. In the times of loneliness, in the times of distress, reading can be a great companion. Hemingway would say that there is no friend as loyal as a book. So books can prove to be beautiful friends. One more quote by a Nobel laureate poet, Wisława Szymborska. She is a wonderful poet. You must read her poem, The Onion. I will give the link in the description. Please do read that poem of Wisława Szymborska. She says, I'm old-fashioned and think that reading books is the most glorious pastime that humankind has yet devised. I repeat, I'm old-fashioned and think that reading books is the most glorious pastime that humankind has yet devised. So it's the best pastime. You'll forget everything. You'll forget Facebook Reels. You'll forget Instagram Reels. You'll forget YouTube Shorts, because they kill your time. They don't give you anything at hand. Reading books is the greatest, most glorious pastime. And not only pastime, it equips you with some tools and some attitude which makes your life better, easier. Another beautiful quote, very small but very, very meaningful. I can greatly relate to it. William Nicholson, he says, "We read to know we are not alone." I would like to add one more quote here by James Baldwin, an American writer, a famous writer. He says, it's actually connected to the previous one. He says, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive." So reading books also teach you that you are not alone suffering. There are many people who are suffering the similar pain. It's books, through stories you come to know that you are not alone who is suffering. You are not alone who is suffering this problem. I was reading a book today on the biography of Prophet Muhammad. The name of the book is Muhammad, His Life Based on the Earliest Sources by Martin Lynx. I was reading about him being orphan. He lost his nears and dears. So when you read it, you, for example, you too have lost your parents. You come to know that you are not alone who is suffering. There have been people who have suffered more than you did, and it makes you feel better. Another quote is by Harper Lee. I'm going to end it today only. There are a few more quotes. Please be patient and listen till end. There are a few more beautiful quotes to come. Harper Lee, one of the greatest novelists, she says, "Until I feared I would lose it, I never loved to read. One does not love breathing." See, when you breathe, you don't pay attention to breathing. You only do pay attention to breathing when you feel you're losing it. You will start loving it. I think you can relate to it because we have been through this tough time of pandemic when breathing was very difficult and some lost their breath. How important breathing is. You realize it when it is about to leave. And book reading for Harper Lee was like breathing, okay, like she would breathe. And she only loved reading when she was about to lose it. Okay, you understand that? Okay, think about it, because these lovely quotes demand more attention, more thinking. So the quotes are already given in the description. You can read them, you can think over them, and you can seek some inspiration from them. "Until I feared I would lose it, I never loved to read. One does not love breathing." Next quote by Sir Francis Bacon, a great essayist, a great philosopher. He says, "Some books should be tasted, some devoured, but only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly." So he actually counts the levels of different books. Some can be tasted, okay, you just tasted them, you just, roughly read them, skimmed through them, fine. Some devoured, some you devour means, you eat them fully. But only a few should be chewed and digested thoroughly. That means read well, rereading and analyzing and writing and lots of things to be done. Okay, so if you haven't found any such book, do endeavor to find few books which you can reread and you can chew and digest. Next one is connected to the previous one, by John Locke, a great philosopher. He says, reading furnishes the mind only with materials of knowledge. Okay, when you read, it will give you knowledge, material of knowledge. It is thinking that makes what we read ours. So it's not only reading that is enough. You have to read, and side by side you have to think. And it is thinking which makes what you read yours. Reading furnishes the mind only with materials of knowledge. It is thinking that makes what we read ours. So you got to think while you read. You read slowly, no problem at all. Slow reading is the best reading. Read slow, read little, but read well. That's what is actually required. That's what is demanded actually. That's what is actually appreciated. That you read well, you remember it, and you then share with people. And that's what actually reading is for. Okay, now 2 more quotes, and then I will be concluding it. It is the famous quote by George R. Martin. He says, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. So reading allows you to live the lives of different people. You are reading the novel, for example, Anna Karenina. You see yourself in the life of Levin, one of the main characters of the novel. You see you find yourself in the character of Anna. So you are living their life and you are reading them. For example, you are reading Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. You might find yourself in one of the characters. Okay, you live some characters. So you are living their life also. There is another quote by Jhumpa Lahiri. It's similar to it. It says, that's the thing about books. They let you travel without moving your feet. So it allows you to travel. For example, you are reading a novel which is set in Africa. You have never been to Africa, but it is set in Africa. You read the details of the places. You feel you are actually traveling to Africa, but it's sort of virtual traveling. So, but it's amazing. It's beautiful. It helps you to connect to the people who are not among you, who are not part of your place where you live in, where you dwell, or from other people. You understand how they think, how they feel, how they live their lives, how they marry, how they talk to each other, how they converse with each other, how they friend with each other, how their mothers are, how their fathers are. You come to know a lot of things by reading. A reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads, reads only one. My dear friends, you deserve a good life. You deserve to live 1,000 lives. You don't deserve to live only one life. So if you aspire to live 1,000 lives, you must become readers of books. You must read stories, you must read non-fiction, you must read religious scriptures, you must read the sayings of the prophets, you must read the sayings of the great men like I have shared today with you. I'm sure that they might have filled your heart with great enthusiasm. And please let me know which quote you like the most. Even if you have to, I'm sorry to request you this, even if you have to listen to this podcast, this episode one more time. Choose the best quote and let us know in the comment section. And if there is any other quote that you know about reading, please share with us, or you can share your own quote if you have one. So let me conclude this session today, this episode and the session on the quotes on reading with one more quote by Gustave Flaubert, the French writer. He says, do not read as children do to amuse yourself or like the ambitions for the purpose of instruction. No, read in order to live. Thank you so much. May God be with you all.